Hey everyone, what's going on? How's everybody doing? Welcome into our latest TDR Cannabis at 5 presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dales, and today we're going to look at a comment from California Governor Gavin Newsom that's making headlines. He joked that if he were the leader of the free world, he'd legalize cannabis and get people high on patriotism. Well, that's a funny line for sure, but the real story here is this. Democrats have been a joke on cannabis reform for years. They've promised, they've campaigned on it, and then delivered nothing. Now Donald Trump, as we know, back in the White House, Republicans control both the chambers, and with overwhelming support among Americans for reform, the Democrats are finally realizing they've screwed up big time on this issue. So let's walk you through why maybe Gavin Newsom's voice matters here, what's at stake, and whether the Democrats have any kind of game plan before Republicans steal this issue. So let's get into it in our latest TDR Cannabis at 5 presented by Dutchie. All right, first up, let's start with the moment itself. Newsom posted on social media joking that during Washington's shutdown chaos, he was stepping in as the leader of the free world. His tongue-in-cheek platform included healthcare, school meals, and of course, cannabis legalization. He said crime will stay low and everyone will be high on patriotism. It was satirical, styled in the all-caps exaggeration that feels ripped straight out of a Donald Trump post. But let's be clear, this wasn't random. Newsom chose cannabis because he knows it's popular right now. And that's the key here, because cannabis polls are through the roof. Around 70% of Americans support legalization, yet Democrats, who have owned this issue for years, have failed to deliver, and that's putting it mildly. So let's rewind. How exactly did the Democrats get here? If you've been following cannabis reform, you know the story. Democrats have controlled the White House and Congress at different points over the past decade, but each time they raised expectations on cannabis reform. Here's some examples. Under Obama, there were signals, but no real federal legalization. Then under Biden, there were campaign promises to decriminalize, clear records, and push reform. Instead, we got stalled bills, half steps, and nothing structural. Even the Safe Banking Act, something as basic as giving cannabis companies access to banking, couldn't even cross the finish line, and that's where we are today. We also saw Kamala Harris and her campaign, and the number one thing that she said if she were to go onto Joe Rogan's podcast is no questions about marijuana. So as much as they have these big promises, nothing has been delivered. So really, they're a victim of their own reality right now when it comes to this issue. So really, when we say Democrats have been a joke on cannabis, that's not an exaggeration. They had the chance, they had the political cover, and let's face it, they blew it. Why? Well, Democrats, they got comfortable thinking cannabis was theirs to champion. They treated it like a safe applause line without actually delivering results, and in doing so, they've opened up the door for Republicans. And President Trump wants to steal this issue, which really brings us to today, because Trump is back, as we know, Republicans control both chambers, and suddenly, the landscape has changed. Oh, we got your attention now? Right now, President Trump, he's back in the White House. He's the President of the United States. Republicans, as we know, run both the House and the Senate. And here's the thing, cannabis reform is no longer a fringe issue. It's gone mainstream. Why do I say that? Well, poll after poll shows strong national support, not just among Democrats, but also Republicans and independents too. Even in red states, voters want medical programs. Some even want adult use legalization. Again, over 70% of Americans want cannabis reform. So what does this all translate into? It means that this is a bipartisan issue whether politicians like it or not. And Republicans who historically opposed reform are now in a position to claim it for themselves. So if Trump and GOP leadership decides it's politically advantageous, which many believe they are, they could roll out rescheduling or some form of banking reform and suddenly shift the narrative. What would that be? Well, Republicans delivered where Democrats failed, and that is the reality. And really, that's the nightmare scenario that Democrats are finally waking up to, which is why, going back to my original point, a joke from Gavin Newsom may actually be something more. So let's look into this a little bit further. So why really bring cannabis into a satirical social post? Well, because Democrats are indeed testing the waters. They know they've let voters down. They know Republicans could seize the moment, and they know if they don't start repositioning, they could lose an issue that was once theirs to own. Cannabis reform would give Democrats a way to highlight Republican divisions. On one side, you've got GOP governors and lawmakers from legal states who see the benefits. But on the other side, you've got hardliners who oppose any loosening of federal law. So that's something to watch. But by bringing it up even jokingly, Newsom is signaling that Democrats may start using cannabis as a wedge issue once again. This time, not just to promise reform, but to pin the lack of action directly on Republicans and President Trump. Political theater at its finest. And man, are we getting tired of all this stuff from one party to the next. Just get it done. But let's look at this. Let's not pretend Newsom Newsom is a perfect messenger here as well. As much as he's trying to champion on this, let's look a little bit at the background and his history of cannabis, especially the state that he runs, which is California. And here's why many in the industry are rolling their eyes at this comment made by Governor Newsom. California's legal market, as we know, has struggled badly. The illicit market still dominates, and taxes have made life miserable for licensed operators. And I mean miserable. This summer, the state actually allowed the cannabis excise tax to climb from 15% to 19%. And only after 3 months of chaos did they roll back to 15%. But that really isn't a win. 15 to 19, back to 15? Like, what direction are we going here? So that flip-flop eroded trust. Let's face it, if you're an operator in California, you don't hear leader of the free world jokes and think Newsom as your champion. You probably think this guy nearly crushed us with taxes. So when you look at Newsom, let's face it, he's a smart politician. He's not a credible national leader in cannabis. His record in California, it undermines his message. Which leads us to the bigger strategic question here. Are Democrats serious about finally owning the issue, or are they just using it for headlines? Right now, I think it's about headlines. And why wouldn't you think that when you look at their track record? Because here's the reality. Democrats may have no choice but to get serious about this. If they keep sitting on their hands and Republicans step in, pass rescheduling or banking reform and claim victory, well, then they can only look at themselves and look back. We were to blame for losing this issue. We had the time, we had the control, we had the power, yet we did nothing about it. But if we want to look at this further, if Democrats want to stop that, they'll need to get a real game plan heading into the midterms. Not more jokes, not more campaign promises, an actual game plan. So what would that look like? It could mean forcing votes, even if they fail to show who's blocking reform, rallying governors and state leaders to keep the issue front and center, packaging cannabis reform with other policies that matter to swing voters. Because right now, the political math is simple. Democrats screwed up and Republicans could steal this issue. This is why President Trump, if he passes rescheduling, is about one thing. It's politics. He wants to crush the Democrats. So really, what's the big takeaway here? Democrats have been a joke on cannabis reform for years. They overpromised, underdelivered, and left voters disillusioned. Now Trump is back, Republicans control Congress, and public opinion is overwhelmingly in favor of reform. So this is no longer a Democratic issue, it's a bipartisan issue. And if Democrats don't act, then Republicans are in position to own it, to flip the script and say, look, we delivered what Democrats only talked about. So that's why Newsom's cannabis jokes do indeed matter here. Not because he's the leader of anything, but because he reveals Democrats may finally realize they can't afford to let this issue slip away. And with that, does it apply pressure for Donald Trump and his administration to get something done? So in my opinion here, investors, operators, and voters, they should pay close attention over the next year. If Democrats fail to outline a real plan, cannabis reform could become one of the biggest political surprises of this cycle, with Republicans, not Democrats, taking the win. If the Democrats do come up with a game plan, then I think that we could get some sort of reform announced sooner rather than later. But if nothing concrete is materialized, we could see an announcement maybe closer towards midterms. So let's hope in some ways they do come up with a game plan, because as we all know, we'd like to get some feedback and an answer and rescheduling announced sooner rather than later. So that's it for latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. Governor Gavin Newsom got headlines with the cannabis joke, but the deeper story is about political ownership. Democrats have failed for years. Now Trump and Republicans hold the cards. If Democrats don't get serious, they risk losing an issue that was once theirs, and maybe for good. What do you think? Leave your comments below. Love to get your feedback. As usual, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications. We'd appreciate it here at the TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dales. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again for watching.